Hey everybody, I am here with Stefany Allaire, developer and wizard of electronic thingies. How you doing?
I'm great.
You know, I said it that way not to be rude, but when I first saw some of the things that you had invented, I didn't have any clue what those were. So I figured some awesome electronic stuff is probably a good baseline into what we're going to be talking about.
No, it sounds about right. Yes, it is.
Awesome. So you're now the products that you're making are being marketed and sold as Phoenix Retro Systems, right?
Yes.
Um, can you give everybody a little bit of a background about that? Because I thought your products were so cool, but they're not easy to explain.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back a little bit in history. How much time do we have anyway? I forgot to ask you.
However
All
long you want to talk, I have
okay.
more than enough beer to be hanging out, and and there's no real preference. Half the time, people are like, "Those are too long," and when I do a short one, I have equally amount of people complaining that they're too short. So that just means let's go as long as it feels comfortable.
Okay. I've told that story many times, but for your viewers, I think it's great to go back to it again. Specifically, it all started in April 2018. David Murray, 8-bit guy, is talking about his. That was the Gigatron episode. At the end of the episode, he starts talking about how he would like to have his dream computer. I was in the I don't know. I was in the mood of retro. I was starting to get back, like a lot of people were getting back into it, but I wanted to have something more. And then I saw that episode, and it really talked to me. And I was like, okay, I can do that because my background, I'm a hardware design engineer by trade. So I said, you know what, that looks like a great challenge. Let's do it. So I wrote down on his forum that day, it's like, challenge accepted. And so basically, I started doing that design where I literally took his list of requirements, what he wanted to have, and I spun it my way, where because I figured that, I'm going to pay the bill, so I might as well design it my way. I have to admit that I had less. And again, I don't want to say negative things about David's dreams and what he wanted to do, but I guess we actually met a few months later, and we kind of realized that we were really going in two different directions. But his requirement list was really what I started off with, and for me, using FPGAs, for example, was really rather easy to do, and it made sense. So the way I went about it, because for me, designing system was something fairly easy to do. I said, okay, I need to kind of put something on top of it, like to make it more interesting. So I just decided to, okay, let's design something that could have been like the follow up to a Commodore 128, like a whatever could have come afterward. And that was my goal. And the FPGAs were going to be like parts that would be simulating the ASICs designed by CPM, something like that. So, and I wanted to position myself like right in between a C128 and Amiga. Okay,
Okay.
so I used the 816. I put some. So early on, it was crazy because I took his list, I went on with it, and then I kind of put my own essence into it, and then I got this out of nowhere, this interview with this company called SnapEDA. SnapEDA is this company providing footprints and libraries for all the PCB's designer. And I happened to be their 100,000 subscribers. And Natasha, which is the CEO, said, hey, do you want to do an interview? And I was like, okay, cool. And I started talking about the project, and she has a large following. And then I got a lot of attention really quickly into the project, but I didn't have anything at the time. So I got like a big peak, and people were like, is it going to be like a C64? Is it going to be compatible with C64 and so on? And that got me really in the position where, okay, what am I going to do with this? So I got influenced a lot at the beginning, which I was not really, I didn't want to go there, and then I got there, and I kind of regretted it. Um, so because the first revision of the Phoenix was really like a something, an amalgamate of what David wanted, what I wanted, and what people were asking for. And that was the first lesson I learned, that okay, people can have asked for a lot of things, doesn't mean that they'll want one. But even at that time, it was not even something I was going to I'm going to sell, and I was just going to make it for fun. It's just later, when I met David, This is where I saw that, okay, we're not going to the same place. I'm a fancier person. I like more fancy stuff, and David wanted to keep it like more closer to C64. I want to stay away from the C64. I really want it to be something that was going to be like a new platform, really a new retro platform where people could discover and design new stuff for it. And I think I shared that with David. David saw that too. But David just has more audience than I have. So in a nutshell, this is how the whole thing started. And then it went from revision A to revision B, and then I got some people on board, few people on board, and then I went on and kept going with the 816 for a while. So there's way more to say, but I don't know if you want me to continue at this point.
I guess I'll stop and ask some questions. So at this point, at the point that in your story right now, is this a physical device or is it still in design form?
You mean right now in 2021?
No. In your story, where you are in your story right now.
No. In late, when I met David in October at the Portland Retro Expo, we met face to face. It was not planned. It was just that he happens to be there, and I knew he was going to be there, and I just decided to go and figured out if I see him, maybe we can talk. I brought a unit. So I had the Revision A with me at the time, which I designed, doing the mechanical design, the electronic design. There is still a lot of FPGA design, the graphic engine and all this stuff was really, really preliminary. And so, yes, there was something that existed, but it was very, I have to admit that when I got into this, I was really because I used to design doing hardware design with PCI Express and DDR3 memory, very fast stuff. And then I got into the whole thing and say, oh, you know what? It's just a 14 megahertz CPU. Who gives a shit, right? It's so slow, no problem. And I said it many times. I was so wrong.
Yeah.
I had a lot of hubris when I got into this, and I've learned the hard way that it doesn't matter. The speed doesn't matter because the 816 turned out to be a great processor to design with, and I really enjoy it. But there's some really specifics to the 816. Anybody who designed with it would tell you that, yeah, it's very quirky, very, very, very fragile in terms of timings and everything. And I think it was a wise decision from David to not use it because it's very, very tricky. And I got in trouble a lot with it. But aside of that, to answer your question, yes, by the time I met David in October, November timeframe in 2018, I did have something. But after that, I had to sit down and rethink the whole thing. And
so at that point, though, it's an FPGA dev board, and you were virtually recreating your idea of a processor? Is that where you are at this point? Or
no. Actually, it's quite the opposite. My strategy was to not embed anything in the FPGAs. I didn't want to do like a Mr. board. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to do like a Mega 65. I didn't want to do any of these things. For me, the FPGA was supposed to be an ASIC. And the ASIC, in the Commodore lifetime or anything, were always specifically designed for specific tasks.
Right.
Graphics, sounds, control. That's always the way I went about it. So I had 3 FPGAs at the beginning, one for control, one for graphics, and one for sound, or at least to do the interface with the sound chips and so on and so forth. So there was no plan whatsoever to use any CPU inside or to integrate a bunch of stuff inside, like to integrate everything in one CPU. I stayed away from this, and I still stay away from this. This is not my model at all. It's completely the opposite. Everything is real. The processors are real. Even the new products I'm designing, all the processors are real processors. I don't believe about because otherwise it's just an FPGA. It's just, like you said, it's just a dev board. You put everything like Mr. And there's already Mr., which is very popular, and it's great. It fulfills like a need, and it's great, but not my model. That's not what I'm trying to do at all.
Yeah, you're not trying to compete with Mr. You're trying to do your own thing. It's totally different. It's
yes.
So
yeah, but the strategy was really at the beginning, because you're talking about this, was really about not including everything. It was really to make it look. For me, my goal was, okay, it needs to feel like something in the late 80s, early 90s. It needs to, when you use it, it needs to feel like a Commodore. When you look at it, it needs to feel like a Commodore. Well, at the beginning it was Commodore, but Commodore is a cult, right? The Commodore following is a cult. And I realized over time that if you kind of play too much with what it means and what it is, you get literally crucified on the center of the village, and you're put to the stake and burned alive because you cannot change what happened, and you cannot certainly not try to put your own ideas of what could have been. And this is something at some point I realized, and I kind of tried to steer away from this. Everything that was Commodore, the logo, or even the code, the basic, all this stuff that David went on trying to get, or he got actually, he got the copyrights to do it. I didn't want to touch that. For me, for example, the basic interpreter for me was going to be like a basic interpreter clean room. Like we need to do it from scratch. I'm not going to take the chance to being sued by all these guys. I don't have the chops to handle that kind of stuff.
So the original idea was to actually make, a real successor to that and brand it Commodore and make it look like it, and but still have to. That was the original idea.
Well, it was very. I mean, early on, like I said, it was really, the idea was to make an attempt. Like if there would have been like a different timeline where, what's his name again? The president of Commodore that left. Help me out here. What was his name?
I'm never gonna remember that. Sorry.
Okay. So the president, the founder of Commodore, gets kicked out of by his own board, and he goes to buy Atari, and it does the Atari ST, right? So Commodore buys the company Amiga, which is very paradoxical in a way, because Commodore has been Commodore up to this point, and the Amiga has nothing to do with Commodore. It became Commodore over time because they got bought, but the strategy and everything, the mentality behind Commodore, behind Amiga, was not even close to Commodore. It was something completely different, and then Commodore bought them, and they started doing the chipset for them, and so on and so forth. But so the strategy was to create something like I don't know the word to describe this, but really like a possible follow-up to the Commodore if Commodore didn't buy Amiga. So what would have been next following the 128, knowing that 128 was like, and no offense to Bill on this one, that's his name, right? Bill Hurd. Yes, it was really like, because Commodore was very adamant about keeping compatibility with the C64 as long as they could, but Amiga was not that at all. But Amiga became its own thing over time, which was great for them. But in between, there was like a missing link. So when I went on with this design, was like, okay, I'm going to try to do more than just putting an FPGA, a processor, and some memory, and try to make it look like a Commodore, and try to fulfill David's wish. I just put something on top, just to try to make it look more like something more interesting to do. Because for me, it was kind of, okay, a processor, a FPGA, some memory, it was boring. So I said, okay, let's create something a little bit more interesting. And what happened is that after meeting with David, I kind of got rid of all this weird ideas to do something close to Commodore. I let go a lot of things that were about Commodore, and I started doing my own thing at that point. But the idea of to create something in between a Commodore 128 and Amiga was still there, because I was always being, as much as David was close to the C64 in terms of what he wanted, my heart was with the Amiga. So I wanted to get closer to the Amiga.
So I think you and I had spoken briefly about this before, and I'm starting to understand the evolution now, because it sounds like this product, maybe David even wanted backward compatibility or something like that, but whatever it would be, it was following an existing path, and your idea was, I want to make something retro inspired out of retro parts, but not following any path. I want it to stand on its own thing, program it, no compatibility other than just if things happen to work because it's the same processor architecture, but that's it, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. You're touching something very important, and this is really part of the vision since the very beginning, and I'm still pushing this idea that what I was trying to do, and I'm still trying to do, and I'm pushing hard, and I know for some people it's difficult to grasp, because the retro community right now is all about, let's pip in our stuff, like let's put it upgrade it to 221 technology. You can use a monitor, you can use an SD card. This is all good and dandy, but for me, it feels like there was something missing. It's like, what makes the retro stuff of today so much more fun? as fun as it was before. And for me, okay, it's great to get your C64 out of the closet, bleach it and make it look great. Like the first day you got it, you put a disc, you get it to work. But, after you play Commando a few times, you're like, okay, you know. So for me, something was missing. And what I realized is what I think is missing is the fact that part of the progression and what we loved about those computers back in the day was the fact that we had to discover them. We had to get to know them. The Commodore in the first years, the C64 in the first couple of years, they were not, the games on them was not great, right? They were like, some few of them were okay, were pretty good actually, but it took many, many years for people to really know the machine and get these super awesome demos done and all these things. But there's a lot of fun out of doing this. And I think this is what's missing right now. And that's why my strategy was really about, yes, you have to learn a new machine. I'm going to design you a new retro machine that will be limited in speed, limited in quantity of memory, but you'll have the chance to rediscover the pleasure of going back to learn, not with an OS, with nothing, a prompt. That's it. You start, you have your workflow, you design your thing, and it's a lot of graphics, a lot of sound. You have a lot of room to have a lot of pleasure, because when you're doing graphics and sound, it's fun because it's a great way to get like feedbacks. I got a sprite. It's very rewarding. Mm-hmm. And this is the fun part. You do a Pac-Man on a retro computers and new retro computers, you don't know the damn thing. But when you get it to work, it's like, oh my God, it's so great. So this has been, that's what it was in the beginning, and still this vision of, yes, it is a new machine. Yes, for most people, it doesn't make any sense. Why are you designing something new? Why isn't it?
I mean, you could also say, if you want to go down that road, you could also say, why would anybody bother installing a triple bypass into their Sega Genesis when you could just get a Mister? And it's because we fucking want to. It's ours. We want to do it. Like, none of your business what we want to do. And so I completely understand. There's a passion involved into some of this stuff. Not everybody might be a software programmer, so they might not understand the excitement you get. Just like most people I know have no clue why I get excited when I get my BVM just a little bit more calibrated than it was before when I have a beautiful OLED TV. And that's fine. It's all about chasing whatever you want. So I didn't quite get that at first when we first were describing it. And, once I listened to a couple live streams I had on in the background while I was working, I really started to grasp where you were going with this. Mm-hmm. And I think the only confusing part, would just be the hardware behind it. And I guess that'll lead me into talking about the new product, because it seems to me that because of new old stock that's available, because it's a retro architecture, you chose processors that were already used in other things, but you're not reusing any of that other stuff. So like you have an x86 processor in there, but a 486 DX, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So many people listening right now are smiling because we grew up with one of those things. But, just because it's a 486 doesn't mean that you're going to boot Windows 3.1 on it. It just means that's the processor that's in there. Yep. And that was the only thing that kind of confused me at first. So do you want to talk about how you kind of evolved your vision into this, and then what this is?
Yes. So again, to come back a little bit, the reason I went that way, because early on it was about the 816. It was just about the 816, and I was really hopeful, and I was really under the impression that there was definitely more of a there's like a group of people that are very enthusiastic about the 816. It's mainly the people designing new SNES games, right? Because the SNES is the 816, or a variation of it at least. But it's I've learned over time that the 816 is very niche. Okay, it's very fringy, because there's like this, again, there's another call for the, say, 6502. There's this big group of people doing a lot of 6502s, and I think David wanted to bank on that. I know I talk a lot about David, but I think he's my reference in terms of where not the opposite of where I'm going, but is the reference where he made some good choices for the processor, because there's a lot of a big following for the 6502. And I was really under the impression early on that the 816 would capture on and would be becoming definitely more like something that people would be attracted to. But I got quite the opposite reaction, which is like, well, it's kind of scary. It's very different. And I have to admit that maybe to a fault that WDC's tools were not super easy to use at the beginning. We're trying to make them more usable. The entry point into the 816 is definitely more difficult than the 6502. I was also under the impression that getting people to do assembly language would be easy, but no, people don't want to do assembly language anymore, and it's understandable. So C was the language of choice, but WDC's tools were not, like I said, super. So for the first couple of years, my horse was the 816. That was my main horse. I say I'm going to run with this. I'm going to do, like I said, my philosophy was, okay, let's give them sound, a lot of sound, give them a lot of graphics, and they should come, right? Build it and they will come. But again, you touch on something very important, because something I realized as well is that there might be 95% in the retro community, which is really, really big, are users. They're not programmers. Right. There's 5% of these people that are actually programmers, but it's normal for somebody who programs that if you do a game, you would like to get your game to be, used by a lot of people. So obviously, if you have to choose between an unknown platform that nobody has and something that thousands of people have, you'll do that. So, which limited a lot the number of people that were interested in the platform. And like I said, I've learned that the hard way. So it doesn't mean that the platform was not good. It was just that, okay, it's very inaccessible. It's not attractive. There is not a lot of value. And all this time, people were complaining about the price, but it was never really about the price or the cost. It was really about the value. Where is my value in this? So moving on to Nick this year. So my personal life situation changed, like a lot of people in 2020, and I ended up being full-time on this. And I said, okay, I need to broaden my horizon. I need to get out of this corner I paint myself into with the 816. I want to keep the 816 because we've been creating a lot of stuff for it, and I want to build over time with it. But I'd like to get out of that corner. And and for me, this 68,000, because I'm offering the Gen X products, will offer these different variation of the 68,000, has always been dear to my heart. And I think this is a processor that's been used countless times on other platforms, so it's known. Mm-hmm. Tools are available, and the 46s was like, okay, if I'm not a super Intel fan, but I figured that I was never much of a 286 or 386. I thought they were crap, and the Pentium and what followed the 46 was too much. So for me, the 46 was just perfect. It's just the right range. It's accessible. It's not a PC. Despite that, you have all the hardware that could simulate a PC, mm-hmm. But you could ultimately probably port some games over it easily, because if you had like a game like the Lemmings, for example, that probably use the mode 13 graphic mode. So you have the compatible mode in the Phoenix, the same thing. So you just change your address space, you change your keyboard address, and same thing, you'll be fine. So for me, the way I saw it is like, okay, I'm bringing these new processors. I'm going to increase I'm going to go from 8 to 32-bit. I'm going to give them, against a lot of sound, a lot of graphics, but then I opening up the door for people to rekindle with working with their processors they loved, without being a PC, without being a Mac, without being a Linux machine, anything but something new.
And this new platform, if I'm understanding correctly, it's going to have a cool case. I like the 3D render picture. It's got one motherboard, but then you could replace the CPU module depending on what platform you want to develop for, right?
Yes.
And it's funny because you mentioned, how you didn't want to get into the Pentium stuff, but this kind of reminds me of those Pentium 2 slotted CPUs.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's just like, that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, I remember building those a lot, actually. So yeah, that's pretty funny. But okay, so that makes total sense. And has there been any feedback as to what's the most popular module been for people that wanted to pre-order or talk about it? Or is it...
Well, for me, the most popular so far has been the 68,000, because I think this is the most accessible. For me, I really pushed for it early on because it was the easiest to interface.
Hmm.
Okay, as much as I struggle with the 816 early on with the timings and everything, the 816s, the 68,000 so far has been like a piece of cake. It's been wonderful. It's very easy to work with. There's no timing issues at all. It's really, really, but it's the different architecture altogether. As much as the 816 requires like you fetch every clock cycle, you need to have an opcode loaded. For a 68,000, you need like 4 clock cycle to get your stuff. So there's a lot of time for signals to be stable. It's very solid. I really love it. So the way I presented it to my community was, okay, we're going to start. I'm going to we're going to make this this early 68 module, 68,000, because it's very simple model to deal with. And this is the first one I'm going to release. It's still 16-bit with 16 mega of memory space, but it's a stepping stone towards like 6830, 6840, 68,040, which are a lot more complicated, because they have caches, some of them have memory management units that really complexify the system. So even if we are still dealing with FPGA, it's not an ASIC. That's the beauty of the FPGA in that case, because I can change the front end interface and adapt it to everything, to anything I want.
That was going to be my next question: is how do you interface such different architectures together? And did you keep the FPGA so that you don't have to try to physically make all of the same parts work on the same board layout? And I guess that's the answer. So your FPGA is basically like, I'm going to try to use a simple analogy here, but if you look at a motherboard, like an older motherboard, and you take out the big chips, the CPU, the graphics card, the RAM, and you have all of the circuitry left in there, that's what the FPGA is emulating. Just
Yes.
the resistors, the capacitors, the pathways between sound versus that. So it's not that people would use this FPGA to recreate one of the CPUs. It's just saving you the trouble of doing 5 different board layouts or something like that. You could just do one and have different cores loaded up every time you switch a module.
Yes. I mean, It's really the glue logic, the bridges. I mean, you could compare this chip as a bridge on a motherboard, really. Aside of certain, and the graphic engine being, it's all included. The current graphic engine, I've included some Gideon SIDs in there, if people don't have the real thing. But aside of that, that's the beauty of this platform, which is all this time we've been creating computers since the very beginning. It's always been the hardware goes with the processor, as long as from the moment you change the processor. Well, early on, if you change the processor, you change everything. Mm-hmm. And then PC came and say, hey, we got some slots. You have the same processor, but then you can change everything around it. So this platform is completely the opposite. The hardware stays the same. You have everything you need in terms of retro. You have a lot of 2D stuff. You can do great games, a lot of sprites, a lot of tiles, sprites, all these things are there. Great sounds, you have a lot of sounds. I mean, there's no need to have an expansion bus on this thing because everything is there. If you put an extension of something, what is it going to be? Mm-hmm. It's just going to make the machine too powerful for what it is, for what it needs to be. So the fun part is that so we are creating a kernel right now that is written in C that will be the same for every single machine, so every single processor. So you boot, same kernel, same kernel, same kernel. But the language has been compiled. It's different language. Maybe there's some differences in where, for example, the 46s as the opposite memory model than the 68,000. Of course, these guys couldn't copy themselves. Like, oh no, it's a treachery. Motorola could not do what Intel was doing. And it's like, what these guys were smoking when they did that shit, right? The big peyote is like, oh, hey, Motorola is doing this, so we're not going to do this, right? So let's think about something that Motorola doesn't do. And then they came up with this stupid thing. Like, for example, when you boot a Motorola processor, there's some vectors at the bottom of the memory that says, hey, when you boot, take that address and jump there. So Intel, on the other side, when you boot an Intel processor, you have to go literally write a jump instruction somewhere in memory so the CPU can read it and then execute it. It's like, dude, what the fuck? What was wrong with you guys? Could not use vectors instead like everybody else? So that's
a very common mentality, though. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a meeting in my previous jobs where people decided to do something just because the competition did it the other way. And you know what? We won a contract once because of that. Like, well, why don't we put the button on the left if everybody else is putting it on the right? And sure as hell, somebody was like, "Oh, we like the button on the left. It's perfect. We'll take it." So, you can't argue with that logic sometimes, I guess.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because in terms of hardware design, it makes things a little bit easier. So my job from the moment the 68,000 works, for example, which is really I'm on the way of getting a lot of stuff working at this point on my development board is really like I just need to adapt. For example, I'm 16-bit hardware interface. I have 16 meg because I only the 68,000 now is only 24-bit of address, so I have 16 megs of address space like the 6816. But then I can make everything work. And then when I put a 6820, for example, then I go to 3232, and then I go to 6830 that has a cache, and then I migrate like this. So in terms of answering your question, so the most popular right away was the 68,000 because that's the one that was going to be shipped with their unit anyway, so they can start working. So my goal is really get them a unit as soon as possible, get them their feet wet as soon as possible, and over time they'll get a new processor board, switch it in there, just reflash the FPGA or the memory that goes along with the FPGA, and then you boot in your new processor, same kernel, and you start doing your thing.
And you're still thinking that the first units would ship this fall sometime?
Yes.
Very cool. So, so from a user standpoint then, because I love the dev talk, even though I'm not smart enough to understand all of it, I still enjoy it. But from a user standpoint as well, though, we first need to wait for developers to get this in their hands and then write some software for it, port some games, and then it's going to be something that users might want to take a look at and go, yes, I want this weird, unique, awesome new retro platform, and I want it for this reason or that reason. But the reasons basically fall on the shoulders of the software developers, correct?
Yeah. It's well, yeah, I say yeah, like half yes, half no. One thing that is really okay, so one of the things that I've been trying to be adamant about was the fact that I wanted to have something that was unique. That's not a PC, that's not a Mac, it's not anything. But I know I had to, come to the realization that to get more user early in the process, if people get on board with something they're familiar with, it might be easier. I'm still promoting the idea that people should develop their own thing because they'll get something out of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, just using is pointless. Might as well use your Amiga, your C64, just do that. But there, like I said, if you're putting a little bit of work to get something out of it, you'll get a lot of joy out of it because most people who use people are actually still using the FMX and the other products that I designed in the past, comes back on a regular basis how much they have fun in doing stuff and designing stuff and creating new things. And so this is always going to be part of my core business idea or vision that developing your own thing is cool. But considering that there's a lot of users that don't want to develop their thing, like I said, it's if you're a user, you don't want to program, obviously early on, there's nothing really you can do unless somebody would come up, and that's what we're trying to do. There's this guy, Vincent, who's part of the EmuTOS, for example, development team that was really is getting a unit. He wants to put EmuTOS for people who don't know. EmuTOS is like the clean room version of the Amiga ST GUI environment that they redesigned and they really created to be ported and to be used on different 68,000 unit. So Vincent is going to port the EmuTOS on the Foenix Gen X and the other models. So that would let people use EmuTOS compatible software with it. So early on, within few months, you could have certain application that if they use the EmuTOS library and everything, or the TOS and not going direct on the hardware, it could actually work. And one good thing about the EmuTOS or the TOS from Atari was the fact that Atari ST was a big MIDI music machine, right? Mm-hmm. So, which is the same thing. So we have a lot in common with Atari ST in that case. So this would be a way to get people to do stuff. So even if there are a part of me that resists that, I need to, like I said, I need to embrace that if we can port a couple of things that are make people more, like I could probably put DOS 2.0 on this and it would work, right? Or, even because Microsoft have put like DOS 2.0 source code online, it's on GitHub. There's like the basic QBasic or something. There's a basic that is there that we could we could probably port very easily because it's written in assembly, that kind of stuff. So early on, I realized that, yeah, maybe being able to port something that is comfortable might bring more people in at the beginning. But yes, in the bigger scheme of things, yes, there's a part of the job that would need to be done by the programmers to bring new stuff, new games, new stuff to get the platform more attractive to users. And on top of that, well, the other good thing is that since those processors are very well known, there's a lot of source code out there that can be easily ported. The workflow is already very much a lot of different workflows you can use. So even for somebody who's not much of a programmer, you could probably transport stuff very easily, which would make people maybe, like I said, more comfortable. But then what's going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I see so many different potential for cool things that could happen with this. But I think, the roots need to be there too for a lot of people who maybe have the skills to bounce off of other people's work, but don't have the root skills to start it from scratch. Are you going to have some kind of software emulation version of this for people that want to develop just on their home PC, or even as hardware is waiting to ship?
That's a good question. which I'm not sure I have an answer to.
Fair enough.
So listen. Early on with the Foenix IDE, somebody took on to do this because we started off from Tom's a guy who started developing an emulator or compiler or whatever. We took what he did on GitHub and we started with this and we created something that was really close to the Foenix, the 816 Foenix. The only thing that was not there was the sound chips and everything. And the person who was taking care of it was kind of busy with something else. So it's there. It can be used early on. Some people are actually doing that. So if you want to do 816, it's there. It exists. People are doing it right now. As far as the 68,000, I think somebody's working on it. I've not asked lately because they're still waiting a little bit on me on how the memory map will be now. It's going to be a bit different. But I guess, to be honest, I think that if somebody wanted to do a software emulation for it, I would probably get the machine out before the software emulation comes out. So
no, I mean that makes sense. You got to finish. You got to finish the project. You got to get it rolling. Once they start shipping off the assembly line, get the software out there. It's not like this is going to ship in September and there's going to be 100 pieces of software in October for it. Like it's just it's going to be a slow rollout before it, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
you're a limited team.
Yeah, but it doesn't stop anybody to come forward and say, hey, we have the source code for all the devices and software. And in the short terms, all the major, like the graphic engine stuff will stay the same. You just have to hook it up to an emulation or software emulation of a 68,000, which already probably exists. So there's just a need for somebody to sit down and just connect everything together in software to create an emulation of the new machine. And, we could start with 68,000 will be a great start for everything because, 20 megahertz, it's not bad. It's still 14 megahertz more than an Amiga, right? Mm-hmm. 13 megahertz. So definitely a slow start. But again, it's for example, if I use the 486 example again, yes, it's not a PC, but the devices, there's still a Super IO in there that is totally compatible with a PC. It's just not located at the same place. It's just not there. But if you could port and change, if you have the source code of a game that was written for PC in the 880s, early 90s, you could literally bring it in because there's way more memory, there's everything, and you could make it work. I mean, there's an OPL3 for fuck's sake on that board, so you have a sound blaster on board. You see what I mean? So all the devices that people used to have, if they don't do too complicated, is already there. So yes, in a way, it's a virtual PC. But I don't like to say that because it makes me like it's like another Me Too product. It's like a PC, but it's not. But again, it depends on the community, software community embracing it, and that's it's a big part of this future success of this. It's, if software and hardware, they go together, if people don't come along, they don't embrace it, they don't, believe in it, it's dead in the water. I mean, it's still going to be, I'm sure a lot of people will have fun with it. It's just going to be limited, and I wish it could be bigger, but we'll see.
It's funny, as you're talking about this, I know I can imagine that people listening who have already ported games between platforms are probably really curious and want to know, they're probably Googling right now what this is. I'm going to have, of course, the links in the description for everybody, but like, they're probably already thinking, what could I port to this? What could I do? And I bet musicians like Remute is probably listening to this going, I wonder what new album I could write exclusively on this, because I might be able to make different sounds than I could. And and I'm wondering who is thinking what right now of the different ways that they could use it. Because while one of the common themes my fellow nerds always seem to have is our brains just start spinning in these ideas. Once you plant that seed, it just starts to grow and grow and grow, and a lot of us tend to obsess over it. So I'm really curious right now, we're 40 minutes into this. I wonder how many people right now are already like twiddling their thumbs going, oh, I bet you I could do this with it, or I want to port this over, I want to use it for that. And it just, I bet you a year from now we're going to have another chat like this where we're going to be talking about all the cool things that we see on it. So hopefully it'll all come together, because that's I don't know, I could see so much potential for awesomeness in this thing.
Well, so do I, but that's the thing. It's been a difficult sell, because like I said, it's it took me a while to really understand, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think, like I said, early on in the process, people, and I'm not going to talk about this because I'm going to be hated if I suck, but let's put it this way. There was like somebody who said something about the pricing, and somebody was claiming they would have something cheap, and they're not out yet. I'm sure people know what I'm talking about, but anyway, it really impacted the people have vision on how things, because, there's the Raspberry Pi, who's been very successful in the world of retro, people putting their stuff on Raspberry Pi for emulation. And Raspberry Pi is very, very cheap. But, they sell millions of these guys all the time. It's like they sell like their candies, like, you want some, go for it. So there was a lot of expectation that platform like this should be cheap. But, in order to have cheap, you have to have volume. In order to have volume, you need to have like a big audience, people need to get on board, and so on and so forth. So when you're building onesies and twosies and you're buying your stuff at DigiKey, every time you're buying a part at DigiKey, you have to bend over, because they're going to insert like a big big metal dildo in your ass, because they're really, really ripping you off every time you're buying one part. So I don't know why people don't understand the concept that these platforms cannot be cheap early on, because there's not a lot of people buying them, right? So price has been very, very limiting. But like I said, it's not the price who's been limiting. I think it's the value that people saw in it. They saw, well, it's a black box. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I can do with it. And if I'm not able to put a C64 game on it, if I'm not able to run a C64 game on it, what is it worth? Right?
Yeah.
Which is different, like for a Mega 65, which is actually a C65, but it runs C64. So it is valuable. You can spend 1,000 euros on it and say, yeah, I can still run my C64 games. So I've been fighting this idea that because if it's a black box, then it's useless. Now, why would I pay $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, $1,000 for this? But again, it's about there's a little bit of work to be done to get the value out of it, which is to actually use it and start learning it. And because I agree with you, there's a ton of potential. I mean, just in demo creation, with all the music in there. I mean, you have OPN2, OPL3, OPL. I mean, this is a real freaking symphony you have on that board. There's a lot of shit you can do with that thing. All the graphics, and now you have multiple resolution. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do, and I saw the same potential, but I'm like, what's going on? People are not interested, but I get it now. It's like, and again, I come back to the idea that till the software people really embrace it and say, wow, we can do this and do that, and start showing off what they can do with them. I mean, There's this guy in Vancouver who bought a machine, an FMX. Hardware, there's 64 hardware sprites. He created a game with crabs and stuff. There's close to 300 sprites on the fucking screen.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. He multiplexed the whole thing. There's 288 sprites on the screen at any moment.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's like, holy crap, I didn't know I could do this. So as the creator, I was like, oh my God. So this is only a portion. The guy multiplexed the whole thing, really. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. So it's just a game. Can you imagine somebody doing demos and doing stuff like this, using all those sprites and all these tiles? And it's like, but you know, it's like, I don't know, I've been the black sheep since the very beginning, but I'm still the only one to produce something and ship it. But no, Stefany, this, that, I don't know. I don't know.
You got to understand though, and I mean this respectfully, but you got to kind of break this down into a couple things. First and foremost, anybody that's ever worked in any kind of hardware at all understands why the price is what it is. And those are generally the people that you're never going to hear from because there's no point in having the conversation. You know why it's the price it is, and they know why it's the price. And then there's the other side where, you know, the loudest voice is almost never the majority. So you have these morons that's like, that should be $50. You're just ripping me off. You know, it's $10 worth of parts and, you know, you're a liar. Those people don't fucking matter. Just ignore them. Even talking about them is a waste of time. But on the flip side of that, it is perfectly reasonable for somebody to say, I'm a user. You know, my talents are in you know, music or sports or writing or whatever else, but my talents are not in programming. And this is too much money for me to spend on something that I don't know how to use yet. That's a perfectly fair thing to say.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, there's always language barriers. There's always somebody that means to say things like that, but the English isn't their first language and they're having a bad day, so it comes out as fuck you, it's too expensive. Like, those aren't the people I'm talking about, you know? But so there are definitely two sides to that. But I think the people that see the potential, the price isn't going to matter to a point. I mean, if it was $3,000, no one's going to buy it. But I mean, it's, you know, it's a reasonable price. But it is, you know, it is just, your idea is awesome, but your idea is not something that's going to sell 10 million. So as long as you're cool with that and the people who work on it are cool with that, everybody, it should be fine. No,
of course. Listen, I'm not, in the very extreme idea that I have, I would be more than happy to restart a new era of retro computing, like computers that are based on 20 megahertz, 40 megahertz processors with new stuff. And all the small group we have, Mega 65, X16, me, we all have this in common, I guess. We all believe that we could reboot this era with new legions of games, new creation, because that's one other thing. You know what? It's great to work and to play Commando, but how much Commando do you need? Wouldn't it be great to have a new spin-off to this? Would it be great? Because we're just revisiting everything. And I'm not saying it's not fun. I'm not saying that it's not fun playing Mario and stuff. But what about a new wave of creativity and a new wave of games that would bring their own value over time and say, hey, that new games that somebody created? Because there's this new wave of creation, but it's mainly on PC, it's on Game Maker, it's on, you know, it's on Unity. It's all good, but this is a different programming, right? Because everything is available to you. All the physics packages are there. You can, and they're awesome games. But if I could just take a portion of these people and bring them in and say, how about you program on real retro machine where you don't have anything, you have to do from scratch. But again, there's no money there. And that's probably the limiting factor. But again, if I still believe that if a group of people that were not really so much about money, but we're really about creativity and needs, and say, hey, how about we use that hardware, that's new hardware, to create new things? Like we have these in Europe, I'm sure maybe in North America, but I think it strikes me to be more in Europe. They still have these demo parties, these DemoCon. Mm-hmm. And I always thought, you know, you could literally bring a bunch of machine. You say, hey, on Friday, you set up a room. You say, hey, here's the new machine. Here's the manual. You have 3 days to create a demo. Go. Okay, so this is challenging, not revamping the same C64 code over and over and over again and trying to go get the bit. I'm not saying I don't try to be insulting or anything. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm just saying that it's just the same thing. I'm proposing something new, and I'm saying if a bunch of programmers would get on board and say, yeah, you know what, I'm willing to invest of my time. I'm sure there could be like a monkey effect, bringing more people, and then you can start with the users. And it's just it would not just benefit me; it would benefit everybody. And we could recreate, because I think one thing we're missing aside of the discovery is the fact that there's no new things. There's no new super games that we love so much. We are stopping ourselves to create a new generation of retro games designed for new retro machines, whether it's mine or David's or Paul's, doesn't matter. It's the idea of because there was a great time, and I think the millennials missed that. I don't know if you're a millennial, but you see.
Every time I check, somebody says I am. I'm not. I'm an old man. I'm 40. So I feel like I've been holding a cane, telling kids to get off my lawn since birth. So whether I just consider me an old man at this point. But you just said like, no offense about your opinion, but I never once interpreted your opinion as you should be doing this instead of that. Since the first time we talked, since this podcast started, I've interpreted your opinions as if you want to do something different, do this. But if you want to program for a Sega Genesis, that's awesome too. Go do that. A lot of people enjoy it. You're not saying that programming for existing platforms bad. You're just saying there are a lot of people out there that want an alternative, and that's what you're trying to provide for them. Am I getting this right?
No, you're getting it this right. Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to listen. That's why it's such a hard sell, because again, for me, I'm not doing that out of money. Although I do a little, I'm doing it a little bit more money so I can pay my rent. But it's not about being rich. It's about bringing an experience. Okay, I'm trying to sell an experience, which is very intangible. It's very difficult, and only the people who actually got into it and did the work got the reward from it and say, oh, I know why I invested that money. Yeah, it was cool to see that platform. It's so cool. It looks new. It's so much power. I can do a lot with this. But then you're also on the fence. It's like, it's a lot to learn, right? It's scary. It's like, why would I get myself in trouble and get to learn a new machine when I can go back to my Sega Genesis? And everybody has their reason to keep going and doing their thing. And I'm not saying they should stop. I understand everybody's dynamic into, if you're a game creator and this is your living, you're not going to design on a nebulous fringy platform just out of you could if you have a little bit of time, right? Because it's so cool, it's so fun, I could do it, but I need to pay my bills, right? I need to do my thing. And if people want to do C64, they can keep doing it.
Well, I mean, you did say, I think you hit the nail on the head before when this is for the person that wants to learn something new. You know, like, and I go back and forth when it comes to the tools I use every day. Like, it took me years to switch from Pro Tools to Reaper. I'm so glad I did now, but I already spent so long learning Pro Tools. I had no desire to learn new music software. I just wanted to record more songs. And I think it was Renee from DB Electronics that finally beat me over the head and was just basically verbally abusing me until I switched, and I was like, all right, you're right, this is totally better. so yeah, I mean, so there's a difference there. If you program for a living, you might not want to learn something new because it's not, you don't have the time for it. But if you program for a hobby, learning a brand new retro thing might be so exciting for any age too. A younger person, it's like, oh, I wonder, this is what it felt like back then, and somebody who had already lived through that could relive that. And I completely understand. And another thing is just, a lot of people like a unique experience. Not everybody, I think it's more of the minority, but arcade games, right? There's very few arcades left. Imagine if your platform was used to make some badass new arcade game that people could only play where somebody features one of these. And I think nowadays a lot of people who are so used to making apps for phones go, oh well, I could make an app that sells 100,000 by the end of the year. But there's a large group of people that want a unique experience. I mean, heck, there's companies we all know that purposely make too little of what they make because they want people to sell out. They want people to want it. They want to create that unique experience. And that side of it's kind of slimy to me, but whatever. But the somebody making an arcade game on your platform and only a couple hundred places around the world having it, I think would be amazing. So I'm just shooting ideas out there. I'm just
no. What you're saying makes total sense. I mean, if you look at the whole retro community, right? You have like 100% of the retro communities. There's probably what 90% are users, 95% of users, and we did the 5% left that are actually doing programming today to create new games. Because I see those videos of different YouTube channels, presenting new games coming out. It's an ongoing thing. I'm just talking about the C64. I'm sure there's Apple IIgs, all of them, right? There's groups, right? There's groups within groups.
There's tons and tons, and I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna get me in trouble. It happens every week, so whatever. But I see probably 75% of the stuff that I see are people who are excited to make new games, who are excited to do as best as they can. Sometimes they're amazing, sometimes they're not so good, but it's somebody's first try. But I do also see a cash grab. I do see a bunch of people, oh, it's a new game for that console you loved as a kid with a pretty box and a color manual, and they're basically selling you to buy the collector's thing. And there's that one company that I just can't stand, that they buy intellectual property of games that either never finished or and they basically just hire the cheapest programmer to finish it, and then they sell it for top dollar, and the manuals are misspelled, the labels are crooked, like the PCBs are junk, but and they got away. I think people are smartening up, but they got away with that for a couple of years just because they knew that they could take advantage of retro people. So what I'm hoping are the people that want to try their best. You might not make the next Tanglewood tomorrow, but you want to try your best. Those are the people I would love to see move to your platform and say, hey, I might start out making my version of Pac-Man today, but next year it's going to be, Mortal Kombat 9 or whatever. Like, I'm just making shit up.
But you see, it's interesting. It's interesting what you're saying, because to finish what I was saying before, and then I'll come back to what you were saying, because I think within that 5% left, or the programmers, there are people doing, or some of them are actually doing for the first time. They're actually putting a lot of effort, because there's a lot of people that knows the machine very, very well, right? But there's a portion of these people that are actually starting from scratch, and they're actually putting all the effort. And that's why I'm saying, for them, their motivation is that, okay, the C64 is very popular, even if they're probably half of them are dead, there's still half of 5 million machine in the world that can still get people to play. Well, I don't know. I was under the impression that most people doing games are doing it for free, but maybe I'm wrong. Some people are selling them. I mean, some people need to recoup their thing. I get it. So there's a portion of these people actually doing the work they would have to do on that platform. And that's the people I'm interested in, and the people that are not so platform oriented and say, hey, I'd like to create a game. And I always felt that if you could create a game on something new, that gives you an edge over everybody else. Obviously, if nobody uses the platform, it doesn't give you anything. So in that sense, there are people out there that are putting the effort to create something new and to learn the machine they're programming to. So I'm like, okay, what about you would do it on that platform instead? So on top of creating something new, you learn something that nobody knows, and you create something, and you become the pioneers, the mavericks. I need a bunch of mavericks that are willing to give up their time. Well, not to give up their time, but to give their time to create something new, to create enthusiasm for more people to come, and so on and so forth. That's what I'm missing right now. I have some, all this time I've been designing this thing, a lot of graphics, a lot of sound. Early on, you know what I got? I got people doing OSs, languages, anything but games. It was very upsetting. It was like, dude, this is a game machine. Stop doing OSs. I don't need OSs. I need games, because this is what attracts people in.
Well, respectfully though, if somebody ends up making these tools and you sell a whole bunch and not a single game is ever made on it, you still win. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I mean, it's who wants to buy a retro machine to do, I don't know. I'll give a name of a language. I'm not insulting anybody again, because somebody's working on Forth, right? Which is cool. It's super cool. But, who's interested in Forth? some few individual, cool individual. And again, I'm not insulting the guy. I love the person who's doing that. He's putting a lot of time in it, and he's been a real good, community member. But I'm just like, that was the first bunch of people got in. I want to do this. I want this language. I want this OSs. I want to create my thing, which is perfectly great. But for me, I was like, okay, can somebody make some games? Because games is what attracts people in the first place, right? If you have a word processor on a retro computer, you'll be like, because it's a word processor. You can do it on your phone. You can do it. It's too close to what we have today.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to say that people could have fun doing it. I'm sure somebody out there would like to do it just for fun, to complete the set of all the tools and the not the tools, but the having a new retro computers and having a new set of tools like that would be cool. I mean, people are talking on the Discord channel, if we could have a web browser, and I'm like, dude, why would I? You can have a web browser everywhere. Why would you want a web browser?
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, but I was against the networking add-on at the beginning, and then I finally put it in there because I thought, it's something that would be very cool to do a retro machine multiplayer game.
I agree 100%.
That would be so fucking awesome.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the one thing that I definitely learned from hanging out with the New York crew and the people that run these amazing fighting game tournaments and stuff like that is it's been a long time since I experienced group gaming in that setup. And modern games are awesome. I like them, but there is something that feels different. Just the same way that you could listen to a classic rock song and from the 60s, and you could listen to a classic rock song that was written yesterday. They're both awesome, but it just feels different, right?
Yes.
So it's having the multiplayer part of it is a big deal. And even whether it's in person, whether it's over the internet, it's, LAN party or WAN party, however old you are, that'll make it more sense. But I think I'm glad that you added that, because I think that could be something that ends up being pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, people were wondering why did I put, my game developer, the person who did the 288 sprite, Norman, he's been pushing to get more joystick. And that's why I put a lot of joysticks on the Gen X, because, the connectors are cheap, very easy to interface. I said, you know what, who gives a crap? And people said, oh, you should put a USB. It's like, no, dude, you're missing the point. It's a 1990s machine. There's no USB on this thing. So, but at the same time, I was like, you can literally, if you do your code right, you can literally have 12 joysticks on one machine, and then you have a network connection to a server that is like 1,000 times more powerful than any other machine, and you have like 10 machines connected together like this, you're going to get some pretty awesome party. And now the Gen X come with 2 monitors, so you could literally have 2 monitors. It's crazy what you can do with that machine if people got into it. And doing a real pixel art retro machine multiplayer, I'm sure would not be that difficult to do, because you're not doing 3D and very fancy stuff. So that really turned me on a lot about the machines. Yes, with an Ethernet controller, because before we had like these not very powerful server, not very powerful machine. Now we have this very powerful server, super quick link, and you have like a 20 megahertz computer. The server will serve you 20 times over before you need the data. Yeah. And that will be super fast. Even if you have multiplayers, it's that just blow my mind. This idea of doing multiplayer gaming and retro in like pixel art 2D would be super awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It would be so freaking. I come back to it all the time. Say, hey, is there anybody interested to do that? Then everybody get busy with their life, so it's not happening. But anyway, maybe one day.
Yeah.
Maybe with the video, who knows?
I mean, there are a lot of really cool developers that do listen to my work, which I'm so grateful for, by the way. So I do hope that, I imagine that most people listening to this are probably just going to be entertained by your story. I mean that in a nice way, obviously, but I do hope that some of the developers, at the very least, will text their buddies and say, hey, I don't know if this is for me, but this is definitely for you. You should look at this. Just spreading the word's always. I mean, you could say that about anything in life. Spreading the word is the most important part. So hopefully I can get some more reach for any of this stuff. How did you even begin to design a platform from scratch? You said you have a background in hardware design?
Yeah, my career, I've been doing electronic design since I've been doing it for 30 years. But along the way, I started my own companies. I was always very much into graphics, accelerations, and post-production, computing, stuff like this. So I always been like, some people are very much into networking and communication. I was always about graphics and pixels. For me, pixels has so much potential. You can do so much with them. So yeah, so and throughout the fact that I was starting these companies, when you're startup, you need to learn to do a lot of things. So I started designing FPGAs, started doing mechanical design. When you're on your own, you need to to get your shit together and get it done, right? So I got to learn. I always say that I'm more like a doctor. I know a lot of things about a lot of fields, but I'm a jack of all trades, right? I'm not a super specialist in FPGA. That I don't find myself to be a super pro, but I'm good enough to be able to do what I'm supposed to do or what I need to do. So really starting to design a computer from scratch was really, like I said, in that case, it was easy because David gave the list of what he wanted, and then I spun it the way I wanted. And then it was a good starting point. Then I just progressed from that, and I just put my own spin on it from there. And like I said, for me, the graphical engine was really the most difficult part because I had to design it from scratch. But that was really the motivation factor behind it. And then after that, it's just plugging a bunch of stuff together. It's not that difficult for somebody who's been doing it for so long. So for me, that part was easy. The most difficult part was dealing with people in general, because I tend to be a giving person, a pleasing person. So I try to please everybody, but by trying to please everybody, I'm not pleasing anybody. So I'm working on that. It's the difficult thing about me is I really want people to be happy with what they have. I really, bend over backwards for them, but sometimes I should say no and just do my way. So I'm trying to be adamant about my vision and try to say no and say, hey, there's a reason why I'm saying no. And then the rest is just putting parts together, buying the parts and doing the layout and testing, debugging it, powering it on, and doing the same thing over and over again. And so, yeah, again, for some, it might be a lot more difficult but it's not impossible. I mean, anybody who puts their mind to something like this, they could do it. It's just a lot of learning curve, right? And a lot of motivation. You need to have a lot of motivation. You need to have something that really turns you on. For me, there's a portion of that. I was always very much into hardware. Even when I did some C64 hacking, it was always about the hardware, changing the kernel and doing all these things to make sure you could copy sections that were erased and stuff like this. I was never much of a software person. So, and I did some graphic. So I see people on Twitter doing their graphic engine, like, well, not graphic engine, but VGA controller and stuff like this. And I was doing that when I was like 14.
I mean,
because I'm old,
we all take different paths, right? So
of course, and I find super fascinating every time I see somebody doing it, no matter the age. It's always fun. I respect people going through the process of doing it, even with dips and old gates and 64s, and this is super awesome, and I love it, and I'm always amazed, and I respect the people who actually do the work, and that's why I'm trying to convince people to a certain degree, planting seeds and say, dude, if you put the work, you'll be rewarded by a lot of great feelings of, fuck, it's so fun, right? And that's so intangible. So, every bit helps, and that's why I thank you for letting me talk about it, because it's a difficult idea to carry on, to say, hey, if you don't have any choice to develop something, why don't you develop on something new?
Yeah, no disrespect, but there's no thank you necessary, because if I didn't like the idea, I wouldn't have invited you on.
So, thank you. I have to be polite, right? I'm not going to say, fuck you, I don't want your fucking idea.
Now, you've worked on a couple other things too. I remember talking to you about your the YM2612 on a chip.
Yeah, this is not going well, I have to admit. This is so basically the status of this is that when you posted the information, I talked about it as well. I have to admit I was very excited about this early on, and the reason I got into this was, okay, the core was available. I think you interviewed Otego or Jose. The great Jose the Great, because he's absolutely amazing, and even his design was inspired by somebody who did the back engineering on the design, and so on and so forth. So when I created the FMXs, I put a lot of 2612, a lot of 2151, and I bought a lot of batches of chips in China. And I was so fed up of dealing with, oh, one batch is good, one should, you buy 20, 19s are bad. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, for fuck's sake, they can be $2, but you have to wait 3 weeks to get them. If you're buying one off, 2 or 3, it's fine. But for me,
Well,
it was
it's not
tired.
the $2. It's soldering every one of them in to test, and then figure, all right, another one's dead. Desolder it. Even if you socket it, right? Even if you socket them just to test them.
Yeah, I know.
That's where the problem is. The $2 each
Yeah.
sucks, but the 5 minutes each really sucks.
Yeah, and you're trying to find the right parts because most of them are remarked. They're not the right part. They're going to sell you 38, 34 instead of 2612, and you just have to look at the package. You can tell. I mean, over time, I got fucked up at the beginning, and then I learned my lesson, and then I stopped doing this. But after I was really always on the lookout to find parts. I literally bought some parts from Japan to make sure they were real, and even people from Japan selling parts from China. But the batch I got, but they cost me an arm and a leg, to get parts from China to Japan. Get stuff from China is easy. Get stuff from Japan is super difficult. Anyway, so I ended up like saying, you know what? If I'm going to keep putting these chips, I need to find a replacement. And that's what got me into doing these parts. So I start talking about it. People were really excited about it. Got a lot of hit on Twitter about it. But when came the time to say, hey, they're available, nobody showed up. Because they're too expensive, because there's no real, if you can still buy something at $4 and you just need one, why would you spend $50 on them?
Right.
So when after you posted your stuff, I was like, I got like less than 10. And I said, you know what? I'm not doing them anymore. I'm not selling them to anybody outside anymore because I'm going to keep them internally. I'm going to stuff my own product with them. I'm going to still support them because there's no demand. It was a freaking disaster, and yet people are so, oh yeah, it's so cool.
Well, it is very cool, but that is kind of why I was talking to you about you got to add a feature that you can't get with the original, and that's what would push somebody to spend the extra money. And on top of that, the work that you did might lead to other stuff. So replacing a 2612 that you could buy, you could buy a bunch of parts Genesis consoles, piece them all together to make a really good one, and now for the same price. But what's once you start getting to the point where you're able to make a chip out of code, that's when people will start to line up for the other things. I mean, you know how many arcade boards are out there now with, single dead chips on them that aren't super complicated. It's not like a CPU. I mean, it's way over my head. I couldn't do it. But, if you were to start reverse engineering and doing stuff like that, that's, I think what you did was the stepping stone to whatever the next thing is. But that's just my opinion. I mean, No.
Yeah, listen, you're not the first one to talk to me about this, and I would be more than willing to, because, okay, so I have the capacity to do it. I do things fast. I turn around fast. I don't fuck around with things. The problem is that I see the arcade world having the struggle where, there's a lot of parts that would need replacement. Some are easy to replace, some others are not. Not specifically about the code inside, but sometimes it's the package itself. Like they have TQFPs, they have a lot of pins. Doing a replacement part is not that, it's tricky, right? Mm-hmm. So I would be more than willing, but I'm not in contact with that world. Everybody says, oh, there's this big needs.
That's what you need me for. Everybody's like, what's that fat, useless fuck do? He talks to people and drinks beer. No. I'll put you in touch with the people that might be able to do that.
I'm more than happy to help the community to use my expertise to help the community and to keep the stuff going. I love arcade games boards a lot, but I got involved in arcade games 10 years ago. I bought a bunch of them. I had to sell them all. And then I have my miniature in the back, and that's about it because there's no space for me to have any, but I wish. So I'm more than, but there needs to be not that I want to be money driven, but there's need to be like a business case attached to this. It needs to be like a user.
That's completely understandable. You're not going to drop 1,000 hours of your life on something to sell 3. If you're going to do something that's that overwhelming, or even just a side project, it's still, there's a difference between fun and hobby and people asking you to do something for money. And I think most people understand that. I think it's only really the trolls that, it's the people that don't work. It's the people that live in their parents' basements. They've never actually had to work a day in their life. Those are the people, generally speaking, who say things like, you should do this for the love of it. You know how many times I've read a comment like, how dare you put an affiliate link in your video? You should be doing this for the love of it, not for money. Well, how the fuck am I going to pay my rent then? I just spent 40 hours testing this product and making the video. What, you think I'm just going to do this for fun and then go and work a 40-hour job somewhere else? Like, I'm not charging you for my videos. You're not even getting overcharged for the thing you're clicking on. It's the same price. So my guess on that is the people who complain about that don't actually work. They're just sad and lonely and angry and taking it out on you and me.
I didn't say anything, Bob. I didn't say anything. You're the one who said it. No, listen, you're speaking you're saying what I'm thinking, but I don't want to say it because I get shit sometimes because I'm really honest and I'm really straight. I told you I
get shit all day. Every single day. So now every time stuff like that comes out of my mouth, and this is only my second beer, so I'm dead sober,
okay,
but like
cool.
Whenever this stuff happens, I always just think like, did I mean that? Or am I just being silly? No, I mean that. And if that's what's going to get me shut down by saying that, that sad, lonely people who are angry at the world want to take that out on me, like that's fine. If that's what's going to get me shut down, the truth hurts sometimes, but I don't think that most decent people would pay attention to that.
Yeah, that's the thing. If the hat fits, then wear it and then complain. Otherwise, if you don't feel included, then means that it doesn't touch you, so it's fine. No, listen, I think what you're saying is right. I mean, there's definitely a portion of the society that is just like that. There's nothing you and I can do about it. That's what it is.
Just ignore them.
It's just that the one that are doing it are the one like you said early on, is like people that are going along with you don't have to say anything like this. Some people sometimes bring valuable criticism and they make sense. They make sense on YouTube. Sometimes I get great criticism. This is my French accent. But some really bring me shit. And it's like, dude, what the fuck, man? What's wrong with you? What? Oh, it's too expensive. Like,
the hardest thing for me, that still to this day I still struggle with, is figuring out who's being a troll and who's just bad at communicating, but they're actually giving really good advice. And there's somebody that I would call a friend now. I don't know if they would call me a friend. Maybe they don't even like me that much, but I would call them a friend. That one of the interactions I had, I basically was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you talk to me that way? And no, I didn't get any of that wrong. And they're like, yeah, you got everything wrong. I'm like, well, what did I do? And they spent 2 hours walking me through what I got wrong. I must have apologized 100 times. Like, I'm sorry. Not only were you right, but you took the time to help me even after I was a dick. Like, I owe you one big time. So like, but how could I have known at the beginning who was who? And that's the thing that I still struggle with so many times, is somebody will say something shitty and if I'm in a good mood, I'll be patient, and then I'll find out, oh, they just worded it badly. That was a nice thing. And sometimes I'm in a bad mood and I'm like, you know what? Go fuck yourself. That's definitely something I still struggle with.
It's tricky because, that's the thing. Sometimes you're going to get, like you said, to a certain degree, is like you get a comment and people don't know the backstory. They don't know why I did certain things a certain way. And they just comment like, why, like, for example, the joysticks was benign. It was really, okay, but how come there's so many? You could use a USB and have an adapter and but dude, okay, you don't know the backstory. Shut the fuck up. You don't, why do I put these? There's a reason. How about you go find out why I put those joystick in the first place?
Which is funny because if they took the time to ask the question differently, your answer probably would have been like, good question. You could get the answer over here. Click on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But is it them not taking the time to figure out what's going on, or it's my responsibility to teach them or to tell them more or better what is this all about?
It's both. It's your responsibility to make sure people understand your products, and it's their responsibility to do a little bit more. Like, I can't tell you how many videos I've launched that 3 days later I'll get a comment, so what's this all about? Oh, I don't know. Read the description. Watch the video. Click on the So there's a happy medium. You have to do your part, even when you're in a bad mood and you don't want to do it, even when you have better things to be doing. And the people who follow any of this stuff, videos, music, hardware, it doesn't really matter. They also have to do their part just a little bit. So
Well, I mean, you can tell when people are interested because they do their homework and they come with great questions, and you can tell when they're just fly by night, just coming over, just oh, it's interesting. And there's these people that just upsets me a lot sometimes is that these very exciting people, the people that just brings you energy and say, hey, there was one when I did the video, the product video. Okay, which I put like a month and a half to create and everything, which is far from being perfect. I get it. But, I set myself a certain amount of time. I said, okay, I'd like to go outside of the norm. And instead of I'll try to do something kind of cool, right? So yes, it's going fast. Yes, I tried to stay within the scope of the song. And, I had to cut stuff short there and there. And some people complain about it. I said, you do know that there's like a pause button, right? You can read, but that's besides but that's not what I'm talking about. So there's this guy who comes along and say, fuck, this is great. This is all we always wanted, like a 32 new retro computer we can develop games. And I'm still and I said, wow, this is so awesome. Finally, I might have created something people really want, or at least a group of people that really wants it. Never heard about him after that. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Don't light me up like this and excite me and then just go away and you never come back. It's like, what is it? So, and I'm not complaining about him. I'm just saying that it's sometimes you get these very exciting, oh, it's so cool. Yeah, I want one. And then because you're not ready, and that's one of the things that's been bugging me because I've been announcing these products many months before they arrive, and I'm like, you know what, this is a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't do that. I should create them and then talk about it, because when at that point they're ready and people are, I don't know, we'll see.
That's an interesting thing is, what information to give out before a product is ready. And I always, because remember, I'm not like, I do YouTube videos, but I'm not a YouTuber. Like I've been a nerd my entire life. I did hardware design, product management, stuff like that. Now that I'm doing this, 90% of what I do is behind the scenes. So when I give this advice, I'm not just some flappy-headed YouTuber who just, reads somebody else's work, drinks beer, and because there's a lot of those that just read other people's work and pretend like they did it. I have the background. So when I give this advice, most of the time, if you don't announce something until it's ready, it's better. There's plenty of times where leaking stuff out and getting people hyped would work, but that introduces a lot of risks. And anything from, oh, that's awesome, I want one, can I buy it? Not yet. And then it's forgotten about, all the way to somebody else goes, I kind of did that last year and it was 90% finished. I could finish it in a month and beat you to market. Like, there's a lot of little things. There's one company in retro gaming. That's pretty much how they make their living, is just finding products that they could stealing it, selling it cheaper. And I've made a couple of projects that I've been a part of, I've made them swear to not mention it, not open source it until pre-orders open, because I'm convinced that company is watching and they're just waiting. So there's always that thing. So, I don't think you launched your product wrong. I'm just saying, in any future thing that you have, I would wait until some were ready to go, unless it was something that needed it. Maybe, hindsight's always 2020. How easy is it for me to talk to you and give you advice when you've done all the hard work and I'm just listening? But right in the.
No, you're right, because that's what I came to the realization. It's a stupid realization for somebody, even for me, because I've been in this world for so long. I'm in this world of product creation and electronics. It's like usually companies are going to develop the product, they're not going to talk about it, or their salespeople will try to find some leads to certain customers to try to find early adopters and stuff like this. But it's like this since the very beginning, because the whole thing started when I had the interview with SnapPDA that really put me in the forefront. And since then, I've been on catch-up mode, trying to get more excitement. But I get it. It's like if you announce something, it's not there, you lose a part of it. That's excitement. And then it's I know it's bad. It's not great. It was not a great move on my part, but it's like I've been on this. Like I said, I've been on this catch-up mode since the very beginning, and I'm trying to change the tide because I'm working on something else, and nobody knows about it.
Good.
Well, few people knows. So, something else. It's not that something else. It's a different model, but at least I'll talk about it at some point. But it's like I really want to come up and say, okay, ta-da-da, it's there. Okay. well, people will complain about the price because it's probably the most expensive of all the products I'm doing. But anyway, it's very unique. It's very dear to my heart. But yeah, this is something I need to change because otherwise, yeah, you get cut. But it's always about catching up with trying to get some pre-orders made before. But again, there's a portion of people that are willing. I mean, a good portion of the community right now are willing to do it because they know me. They know that I'm going to deliver. I'm going to do it. They're not afraid. But the new people are kind of, okay, who is she? Is she going to promise? I mean, it's not under the umbrella of Kickstarter, although I feel that even on Kickstarter, you can lose your shit anyway.
Oh, that's worse. The fact that you have a reputation of making products and selling them and doing your own pre-order, to me, is safer. If you threw that on Kickstarter, you know that a lot of people have gotten burned on Kickstarter. A lot of people. So it's almost better that you did it the way you did it. It's different if you had a product that you were going to sell 100,000 of, like a small cheap thing. Like, all right, cool, let me get the funding for it. But for what you're doing, I think you made the right move on that part of it.
Well, it came really like organically. I mean, there was a time where I wanted to do a Kickstarter. I'm not saying I'm not going to do it, but it would be for something very specific. Casing and stuff like this. This is where volume would speaks louder and would force me to go out of the, I would do a Kickstarter on how to transform a 3D printed enclosure into a real enclosure, and to reduce the cost dramatically so people could have more access to it. And this is normal for every product, even an LCD company making an 8K monitor. I'm sure everybody knows that the first 8K monitor coming out of the production line was not $200, right? No,
but maybe in
2 years, it's 20 grand, right?
Yeah.
So this is the same dynamic. So if we come back to where we're talking before, it's still attracting these people that are willing to put that kind of money up front are the Mavericks, and that's what I need. But I need more of them. I just need more of them. And yeah, Kickstarter makes sense. It's a lot of work, Kickstarter. You need to have a lot of follow-up, a lot of followers right up. I mean, I grew a lot of my Twitters for the last 2-3 years, but Twitter is just Twitter, right?
Yeah.
You posted at the wrong time, you're fucked. You don't catch it, and you start bugging people, and I don't like bugging people all the time. And that's one of my weakness, if you will. I'm more than happy to talk about it, but what do? I call that the what's his name? Martin Marble Machine Syndrome, where do I spend times on making videos, or I'm spending my times on actually finishing the damn thing so I can do my tour. So that's a decision I made at the beginning. I say I want to focus on designing, but where's the line where this people seeing you design is interesting? It could bring more people in, as opposed to just create a product and sell it and saying, here it is. And I don't have the answer. Do you have the answer to that question?
No, if I did, I wouldn't be living in a tiny ass apartment right now with a 3x3 foot space to record in. So yeah.
No, but I mean, it's like this thing. What do you do? Do you do design, or you do videos about your design?
You do both, and you learn to integrate it in. And that's so it's one of these things where workflow is 99% of it. If every time you do a video, you have to unpack your camera, set it up, do it, you're never going to do a video. So get things ready. And then, however you unwind, right? Roll a blunt, pour a glass of wine, tall glass of water, whatever. It doesn't matter. However you unwind, once a week, just pour your glass of water, flip on the camera, and just talk about the development you did. And if 10 people or 10,000 people listen, it doesn't really matter, because it's getting it out there. People see, even people who don't watch the videos, who want to follow up on the project, will go, oh, there's a video a week. Okay, Stephanie's working her butt off then. Cool. Like, so that's because it's
okay,
very,
this is good.
It's much less effort. The moment you switch over into anything that you have to edit, it just, I mean, trust me, on this one I could speak with freaking experience on. That opens up a can of worms where you're going to do the exact fear that you had. You'll spend more time on videos than development. But try, stuff like this. Like if we did this live, there would be no editing. I like to clean up the audio to make it nicer, because most people for these interviews that I do, like I would say 90% listen audio only. So I would like to clean up the audio. That's why I don't do many of these live too. But anything you could do to cut down on production time so that you could flip a switch, do a cool video. It could be 15 minutes. You don't have to, with YouTube and their stupid algorithm, it's got to be over 10 minutes, but it doesn't have to be much more. You could just talk for 15 minutes and that's it.
Well, that's the thing. Well, I guess this is the model I start doing, although it still take a little bit of effort on my end to actually sit down and do it. I love the streaming format because we don't have to do anything like this. I just make sure that the sound is good. I think it's very important that the sound quality is good. So I agree with you on this one. And there's a lot to talk about, but then you come and it's Friday night. It's like, oh, do I want to sit down and start talking about my shit? And it's very draining as well. It's like I know I need to do it. But yeah, maybe doing once a week, like you said, just settling down, winding down, having a glass of, and just talk about. Yeah, I can do 10 minutes. I can do an hour and a half. I can do 2 hours. No problem there. That's not the point.
Keep them
It's
short.
just
Do like 10, 15 minutes just to get started.
all right. So that's a good point. I will try to do this because I really want to talk more about it. But I get caught into my mind about what I'm going to talk about, how and structure it, and then it becomes like a tedious and like a homework, and I'm like, oh fuck, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do any editing at all. I was like, thank you very much, have a great day. I have other stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
I don't have time. I mean, at least Martin has some people to actually do the work for him, so he's lucky. I'm not that lucky. I don't have like have you seen these videos lately, Martin, with the Marble Machine X?
No.
You don't know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but I haven't seen any of the videos.
Okay, so yeah, he has his buddy in Sweden that they've been doing like 3, 4, 5 hours streams about the development, which is like it's a kind of interesting format. And he has this buddy is live and he's doing all the management of all these videos. So Martin is doing the development, he's doing all the media handling. So I don't want to spoil his name or say something wrong. Anyway, he has a great setup because he has a lot of followers and it's going great for him. But he's still cut into his own process. Anyway, so I think this is something I wanted to get better. I definitely want to get to a point where I will develop the products before I'm going to release them. But I have to be honest, I have my plate full for a long time. So aside of this specific product that I'm working on that is directly related, they're all compatible. It's really going to be, I want to focus. Some people complain about this, the fact that I'm kind of all over the place. Try to focus more, although having 4 or 5 different processors to support is being all over the place.
It is, but as long as the product gets released, it's different, Like Mike Chi is constantly adding new features to the RetroTink 5X. You could describe him as being all over the place, but he's nailed every one of the product launches. He's got enough stock for that you could possibly get in a chip shortage. So it's one of those things like, Mike delivers, and Mike also is all over the place with his crazy features. Everybody wins. So as long as you're still delivering, I think you're cool with the features. It's only the people I have a lot of friends that are just as scatterbrained as me, but for whatever reason, for all of my faults and negative sides, if I say this is going to be done, it's going to be done. Sometimes most of the time it's not as good as I would have hoped, but it's done. It's out there. I mean, you could describe most of my videos that way. Good enough, not as good as I hoped, but like they're there. They're on time. They're when I said they would be. And I think that's just so important because especially when you're working for yourself, I've seen so many people go down that hole of well, it's not perfect yet. Well, I need, all right, well, I'm going to change it. Oh, well, now I'm going to have something else to add to it. And then you blink an eye and 2 years have gone by and you don't have one thing released. So
yeah, for designers, it's very difficult. I mean, every engineers I know have the sparkling syndrome. I don't know if you know this. This is looks sparkle. Oh, it's fun. Oh, look, it's sparkling. And you're just, so I do that, but I try, I got old enough to try to mitigate it to a certain degree. Like I said, it's a mix. The Gen X, for example, the fact that there's 2 processors was really like the idea that I didn't want to destroy what I did in the past, but bring something new. And the fact that I could have multiple processors was like, okay, this is cool. Let's do it. Right. But it's still, at the same time, it's also very incremental because we're going to start with a small one. We're going to get bigger and bigger. And it's like I said, since it's the same platform all the time, I don't have to redo everything. So the big core, and that's one benefit of having spent all those 2 3 years developing the first version of the product was most of the work has been done during that time. But it is sometimes like a few weeks ago I was looking into the MIPS processor. It's like, ooh, that would be sweet, and I could actually do it. We could actually put the MIPS in there the way it's structured. But I was like, okay, in 2021, this is distraction. Okay, I'll forget about this, guys. Okay, bye-bye. But for a while, 2 3 days, I was looking at the data sheet to say, MIPS would be cool. I'm still dealing with a 68,000. I'm like, okay, Stefany, calm down, calm down.
Yeah,
So,
you got to be really careful of burnout, though.
oh
I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know if you've hit that, but I think I hit that every. Now it's at the point where I hit it like every 3 months, and it lasts like a month, and then 3 or 4 months go by. But it's not only is that bad for your health, but then the other stuff that you enjoy doing starts falling off. Like I love playing guitar so freaking much. It's one of the few things in the world I was actually pretty good at, and I don't think I've touched that in a month, and because it's just like. It's just too much on my plate. So you gotta be careful
Yeah.
not to do that to yourself. I'm
Well,
working
I
on
did.
it. I'm getting back.
Yeah, I did that because last year that's my video I did about. Well, that's the funny part about that video. You heard about this. Like I did a video. Like I was really fed up about the people complaining, and it was funny because it was always the same people complaining, but it really weighs on your creativity and all your time you're spending on this. Like you, it's crazy that you would take into account just two people saying the same thing over again, and just it would be so much easier to just ignore them and say, fuck yourself, go fuck yourself.
Or say
But
nothing
that,
at all and hit mute.
yeah, but they're writing on Discord, they're part of the community, so you're not
Oh,
gonna say.
I thought you meant
So
like
it
YouTube
was.
commenters or
No,
something.
no, no, no. It was really people of the Discord with, oh, you should have this, you should have that. It's like, would you, how can you just use it the way it is and just stop complaining? And it's not gonna be a freaking a Pentium or whatever, a i5. It's like it's a retro computer for that
Hmm.
So anyway, so that day on June last year, I was like really fed up and everything, and I was like, okay, you know what? I think I'm gonna. I didn't say it literally. It's like, oh, I'm ending it, but people interpreted like, okay, she's done. In reality, I never stopped. I kept going, going, and going, and then I lost my job, and then I start working on, making it a full-time gig. But it's funny how I do all these videos. I see rarely any follow-up by any pickup by any other website, but that specific video, people picked it up and said made like a big news out of it. Like another creator being fed up of the,
Because it's drama.
trolls.
I it,
No, no,
it
I know, but it's
yeah.
like it just destroyed. I sabotaged all my shit in that day, and I regret that doing that. But anyway,
Yeah.
I've been trying to save. We kind of go back to where I was, and I didn't get that. But at the same time, if I lost a lot of people, that means they were not really interested, right? So I got a great community, a great amount of people. I get new people on regular basis now. It's not even close to be anything like the other guys have in terms of audiences. But you know what? I'm creating, I'm delivering, I'm shipping. There's no waiting. I mean, there's only the waiting for development of new things, but it's not like, oh, we don't know where we're going. They know exactly where we're going. So in that case, I'm really proud of it. But to come back to what you were saying in terms of being fed up and burned out, yes, I've been through that phase where, you need to find a balance between work and play, but it's tough. It's tough, and even when you're in the middle of a new design, it's even harder because, okay, I need to get this shit out. I need to get this shit out. These people are waiting, but nowadays it's not that bad because everybody's in freaking vacation. So I'm like, okay, it's good. It's good time, right?
Yeah.
July, August is a great time to not think too much about it, but September, October will be like, okay, I need to ship this, I need to ship that, and yeah.
Yeah. Have
Plus
you been
the
affected by the part shortage at all for the components or?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But in a good way, I like I said, I mean, for me, I've been in this industry for a long time. I mean, I was surprised to see a shortage. I mean, I understand the shortage by TSMC. They have their thing, shut down. I get it, but you have TI who has a lot of parts that are in shortages, and I'm like, dude, you have like 200 fabs everywhere around the world. You're gonna start telling me that you're running out of that power supply chip, like a switching power supply chip. Seriously, you gonna fuck with me with this? I don't believe you're doing I mean, this is my conspiracy theory that TI is just doing it on purpose just to get the price up. I mean, you would buy this part like 75 cents. Now they sell them like $7 each. It's like for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
So yeah, so yes, but the cool thing about retro computer is that I'm using old parts. So those old parts are available, and I
that's
make
awesome.
choice. Yeah, and I make wise choices about using parts that are, well, in that case, a little bit more expensive, usually not use as much. So you need to pick and choose the parts you use to make sure that they're not going to be an allocation and be. But yeah, because the Phoenix U has the Cyclone 10 and it's there nowhere to be found
Hmm.
anywhere. So I need to redesign this, but the respin will integrate the usage of SD-RAM instead of SRAM. So that's going to reduce the cost. So it's a win-win in reality.
Cool.
So yeah, no, I know better to start designing with stuff because I think both projects are stuck with that problem.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, ooh, so I'm the only one standing, but still I'm the one that is not known. I'm like, yeah, I got stock, I can sell it to you. And I'm like, nobody hears me. And that's very upsetting because everybody else has all the audiences, but they're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. It's not coming out. And now they designed a new version of the Vera on the X16 and there's no stock.
Yeah.
Duh.
All right. Sorry, I needed a quick break there, but we're back. But all right. So I mean, I've kind of been sold on your project since I first talked to you about it, and since I first took the time to really understand what it was. Hopefully, people listening will consider it. I mean, as we spoke about before, this isn't going to be something that every single person that likes retro buys, but I think there are people out there that are going to like it, and there are some devs that are going to be very excited to try something new like this.
Yeah, and I'd like to, the I mean, the shortages has forced me to redesign the U, which is the C256 U, which is the entry level platform, and it's going to come in September, the new version. And I'm like, I wish that people that are waiting on the X16 could look into it because if there are so many people interested to do X16 work, I wonder why they would not be interested into a $200 platform that has more and it's already, well, it's going to be available again for them to get into. So yeah, I just want to say that out loud that, guys, if you're going to spend your time on a platform that doesn't exist for still another many months, that's my forecast because of the shortages, not because they're not ready. I think they got their V3 like a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're getting close. I'm still like, why are you, pouting on my shit when it's there, right? It's like, come on. Anyway, so it's out there. It's going to be available again in September.
Cool.
And it's a great entry point to get into new retro stuff. And you never know. You might have some fun along the way.
So where could people find you at the most? You have your Discord server, and you're on Twitter and YouTube, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so Discord you can find the address of the Discord on the website.
I'll put all the links in the description for everybody as
so
well.
Yes, finding me on Discord is the best place to find me quickly. I'm on Twitter all the time, a little bit less so now because I'm busy designing, but I post on regular basis. YouTube as well. I have my email address, which is my Steph at C256 Foenix. If they want to contact me for any questions at all. I just finished revamping the whole store and the whole product pages for the products that we offer and we are gonna offer this fall. I mean, like I said, the idea that the thing I'm working on is definitely it's definitely compatible with the Gen X, and it might come sooner because I actually have a board already working on it. It's actually the platform I'm using to actually do the development because the Gen X itself is since it was in different parts, it's a lot of assemblies in the Gen X to make it small and compact and everything. So when you're doing a design, you're trying to create one board at the beginning and you integrate everything at the beginning. So you don't have points of failures with cables and inversion and shit like that. So you get everything on board, you develop your shit, and then you package it in the way you're supposed to. So the platform I'm using to do this is a product that will come probably sooner than the Gen X. So since they're really related to each other, so when this one work, I can just spin it off and to create all the assemblies, and it should work like first spin. And like I said, the DRAM controller that I want to put on the U is the one I'm going to develop for the Gen X. So I'm going to use that R&D portion and put it in the U and bring a new U with a different FPGA, but still same features. So yeah, the store has been revamped to reflect all these changes and everything. So contacting me, all these places. The products, like I said, the pre-sales is on for all of them, and the schedule is the U and the new product in September and end of September, and the other one probably around the end of October and November, and so on and so on. And it will start with a small processor, and then we're gonna start, shipping the others by mail afterward, and you can start developing with your CPUs of preference.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. Well, this definitely isn't going to be the last time we talk. I'm sure, you're going to have more crazy cool stuff coming up that will, I would love to have you back on. If you ever just also need somebody to hang out on your podcast, if you want to do a weekly thing now, I'll come and talk with you once. But yeah, it's,
that'd be awesome.
Thanks for taking the time to do this. It's very cool to talk about your products and hear what went into them and everything. And I'll of course have links to all of your stuff in the descriptions.
Yeah, and again, thank you very much for the time and everything. And again, if there's anything I can do to help the arcade board revamp industry or community, let me know. I'll try to help.
Hang on after we're done with this. I'll talk to you about some of that.
Okay, cool.
All right. So we'll see all of you next time. Thank you for watching.
All right. Thanks.